She stood at the front of the conference room, heels clicking like gunshots against the polished tile floor, a smug smile playing at the corners of her lips. The morning sunlight spilled through the tall windows, casting long golden slashes across the table where the entire department had gathered. Directors, managers, and even the VP of strategy, arms crossed, waiting. I leaned back in my chair near the end of the long oval table, fingers steepled beneath my chin, watching her with a quiet stillness that was anything but passive. My stomach churned, not with nerves, but anticipation. I knew exactly what was about to happen. She clicked her remote. Nothing happened. Another click. Still nothing. A flicker of confusion passed over her carefully made-up face, but she masked it quickly, laughing a little. "Sorry," she said, voice chirpy, bright, too. Bright. "Technical hiccup. One sec." The screen behind her remained blank, a gray void. Her eyes darted to me just for a heartbeat. Then she turned back to the crowd and started to talk. It was like watching a tightrope walker suddenly realize there was no net beneath them, and the rope was slick with oil. Her voice wavered as she began to explain the structure of the pilot project, the timeline, the data models. I almost admired how quickly she tried to improvise, spinning phrases she'd lifted from our late-night strategy meetings. I recognized my own words coming out of her mouth, dressed in her voice. She had no slides, no infographics, no statistical visuals. Because I had them. Because I had built them. I'd spent 4 months buried in that project. Dozens of nights, with dinner going cold beside my laptop, weekends blurred into whiteboards and spreadsheets, tests, recalibrations, iterations. It was my baby. And 3 days ago, I caught her in the break room pitching it to our manager like it had been her idea. "I've been leading this for a while now," she said, sipping coffee like it was just another Tuesday. I stood in the hallway, unseen, blood pounding in my ears. I didn't confront her. Not then. I just smiled, walked away, and started planning. Now, I watched her stammer through the analytics portion. Because of course she hadn't done the analysis. She had none of the data. She didn't even know where the raw files were stored. The room shifted. Eyebrows rose. Someone scribbled something on a notepad. The VP leaned back in his chair, face impassive but unreadable. "Do you have the projection slide?" someone asked. She froze. I think maybe there's been an issue with the file upload," she said. "Give me a minute. I'll pull it up." The silence stretched. She fumbled with her laptop, eyes flickering across the screen. Probably, realizing the only thing in the folder was a blank document I'd left behind like a calling card. Nothing else. No charts, no models, no summaries, just one single line, typed in bold, "Good luck." She looked up, and this time, her eyes didn't flick to me. They locked. I raised one eyebrow, tilted my head, held her gaze like a blade. Someone cleared their throat. "Do you want to reschedule this?" "No," she said too quickly. Look, maybe there was a mix-up. I can explain the numbers verbally." "You said you'd finished everything last week," our manager said, brow creased. "You told me you had the final deck ready to go." Her face crumpled just a little around the edges. "I did. I swear I did. I think something went wrong during the file transfer. Maybe I uploaded the wrong folder. A lie on top of a lie on top of a theft. I felt no guilt. None. Because it wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about truth. About pulling the mask off in the middle of the masquerade and letting everyone see the face behind it." The VP of strategy interjected, "Do you mind if we pause for a moment?" She nodded mutely, blinking fast. He turned to me. "You were also involved in this project, weren't you?" I let a pause stretch, just enough to feel like silk tugging across glass. "Yes," I said. "I was." He studied me for a beat. "Do you happen to have the full version of the presentation?" My hand moved slowly, deliberately, opening the laptop in front of me. I do. I slid a USB into the port, eyes never leaving hers. The screen lit up. The first slide filled the projector like a spotlight. Clean, polished, exact. I watched her face as the colors bloomed behind me. My colors. My design. My work. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out, and that was just the beginning. I stood as the first slide settled into place, and all eyes shifted to me. The shift in the room was almost physical, an invisible weight redistributing itself, gravity realigning. I walked to the front with calm, deliberate steps, my heart beating a slow, steady rhythm. Her perfume still lingered in the air, sharp and saccharine, but her presence had evaporated. All that remained was the wreckage of her false confidence and the truth rising like smoke around it. The VP gestured politely. "Please, walk us through it." I didn't look at her. Not yet. I didn't need to. She had already shrunk into her chair, legs crossed tightly, hand clenched around the edge of the table like she was holding on for dear life. This pilot initiative was developed to test AI-driven logistics improvements for warehouse operations. I began, voice level. We started by analyzing the inefficiencies in current processes, delivery lags, misallocated inventory, and miscommunication between vendors. Slide 2 appeared with a soft transition, a layered diagram of the existing flow versus the optimized model I had created. Heads nodded. Someone murmured an impressed, "Huh." I didn't speed up. I let it breathe. As you can see here, I continued, we focused on automation models, machine learning adaptations for real-time decision-making, and predictive analytics to anticipate supply chain disruptions. We tested 3 different algorithms. The one that yielded the highest efficiency increase was a hybrid neural net, which we trained on historical data from Q3 to Q1. Another slide. Graphs and data points. Animated transitions. Clean lines. No fluff. No filler. Just facts wrapped in razor wire. I didn't embellish. I didn't brag. I let the work speak. Midway through, I felt her eyes boring into the side of my face. I finally turned to her. Her lips were parted like she was about to say something, but no words came. Her fingers trembled slightly where they rested near her untouched coffee. Her nails were painted red. That detail struck me, like blood on porcelain. I turned back to the room. Our model predicted a 37% decrease in misallocated shipments, I said, and actual results were within 2% of projection. This graph here shows the deviation from expected performance over the trial period. Note the stabilization trend after the first 2 weeks. Slide after slide flowed. I saw their expressions shift, from polite interest to focused attention to clear, impressed recognition. A few department heads leaned forward, whispering to one another, tapping fingers against their phones, perhaps already forming ideas. Plans. I felt the moment the tide turned. When the ownership of the project became undeniable, irrefutable. Someone raised their hand. It was Julia from the financial planning team. "Can I just ask?" she said, eyes flicking toward the woman, who had tried to claim my work. "When exactly did this model get finalized? Because we didn't receive any draft versions until, last Thursday?" "Wednesday night," I replied smoothly. "I uploaded the final data set at 11:48 p.m. I can show the commit log if needed." Julia nodded slowly. She didn't look at the other woman again. None of them did. By the time I reached the end of the presentation, slide 32, they were already convinced. The VP looked almost amused now, one eyebrow raised as if to say, "Well, that answers that." I closed my laptop gently, the room still silent, suspended. "I'm happy to walk anyone through the back-end architecture later today," I said, meeting the VP's gaze. "There's a few custom Python scripts I had to write to integrate our legacy system with the new models, and I can give access to the codebase." That would be great, he said, nodding. Very impressive work. Very thorough. He glanced down at his notes, and then, almost as an afterthought, looked across the table at her. Anything you'd like to add? There was a beat of breathless silence. She opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. I wasn't aware that the latest files hadn't been synced. I thought, well, it doesn't matter now. She smiled, but it was paper thin. Obviously, we're just all glad the team effort paid off. I tilted my head slowly. Team effort? She flinched, almost imperceptibly. I didn't have to say anything else. The damage had already been done, and it was clean. Clinical, even. No raised voice, no direct accusation. Just the facts. Just reality, peeling away the fantasy she'd tried to construct like it was made of paper mache. After the meeting ended, people filed out slowly, talking in hushed voices. No one looked at her. I packed my laptop calmly, like this was any other Tuesday. Like I hadn't just dragged a thief into the spotlight and let her drown in her own silence. But she didn't leave right away. She stood a few feet behind me as I slid the USB back into my bag. Why? She whispered, voice low, bitter. Why? Did you do that? I turned, finally looking at her full on, the way I hadn't all meeting. Her eyes were red around the edges, mascara starting to smudge. Why did you? I asked. That shut her up. No comeback, no spin. I stepped closer, lowering my voice just enough. You didn't just take credit, I said. You tried to erase me? But the thing is, if you don't know how the engine works, you can't fake driving the car. And I walked out. Just like that. But it wasn't over. Not yet. The fallout began quietly. No slamming doors. No dramatic email threads. Just silence. Slow and creeping. Like fog curling under doors. She came in the next morning later than usual, head down, blazer buttoned too high like armor. Her desk, once a hub of small talk and sycophants, had become an island. Conversations paused when she walked by. Laughter dulled. No one said anything, but everything had changed. By contrast, my inbox exploded. Subject lines stacked like praise in bullet form. Great. Job yesterday. About your presentation. Impressed. Follow up on your model. Meetings were requested. My calendar filled by noon. People who hadn't said my name in months were suddenly inviting me to collaborative syncs and brainstorm lunches. But I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The truth was working on my behalf now. A silent courier delivering justice from one office to the next. The VP scheduled a one-on-one with me by Friday. His assistant added the appointment herself. No back and forth. When I stepped into his office, he smiled like he'd been expecting me. I'll get straight to the point, he said. You've got talent, and more importantly, you have discipline. Strategic vision, but also execution. I want to expand your scope. He didn't say her name. He didn't have to. It was like she was already being cut out of the future, one meeting at a time. You'd be leading the next phase, he continued. We're looking at potential full rollout by Q3 if the numbers stay strong. You'll report directly to me. I nodded once, professional, grateful, but calm. Inside, though, something uncoiled. Not just satisfaction, something deeper. Like reclamation. Like breathing air I didn't know I'd been denied. Later that afternoon, she tried to corner me in the break room. Her voice was sharper now, lower, with that brittle edge of someone trying not to break. You think you've won? I didn't look up from my mug. There wasn't a game. You could have come to me, she hissed. You didn't have to embarrass me. Now I looked up. Slowly. I met her eyes with a stillness that made her flinch again. I didn't embarrass you, I said. You did that yourself. Her jaw clenched, teeth grinding together so hard I could hear it. I was trying to make a name for myself. Then maybe you should have used your own work, I didn't wait for her reply. I walked past her and left the scent of burnt coffee and regret behind. The days kept passing, each one colder to her than the last. She was still there physically, still showing up, but something vital had drained out of her. She stopped speaking, up in meetings. Her notes in shared docs were minimal, scattered. When our manager assigned a smaller task to her, data validation for an unrelated report, she didn't protest. It was like watching someone shrink in real time, becoming less and less of a presence, until she was just background. Then came the email. It hit my inbox on a Wednesday at 6:17 p.m., just after I'd packed up my laptop. Subject, transition. The body was short. Effective immediately, I will be stepping back from my current role to explore new opportunities. I'm proud of the work we've done together. Please direct all ongoing inquiries related to the logistics initiative to my name. No signature. No farewell, no soul. That night, I sat by the window of my apartment, a glass of dark wine in hand, the city humming low and distant outside. I stared at the email again. Not with joy, but not with guilt either. I felt nothing. And then I felt free. She vanished from the office entirely by the end of the week. Her desk was cleaned out without ceremony. No card, no cake, just the quiet shuffle of someone from HR placing her nameplate into a box, sliding her ghost into the past. But I wasn't done. Not yet. Because what she took from me was more than a file or a pitch. It was belief, mine, in myself. And I wasn't going to just reclaim what I'd lost. I was going to rise far enough that no one could ever try to take it again. The promotion came 2 months later, but it felt inevitable, like gravity finally remembering to pull the apple down. I stood in the same conference room where it had all unfolded, a different kind of audience now gathered around me. Senior leadership, external partners, even a few executives flown in from other branches, all watching, all waiting for the unveiling of the next phase of the initiative that had once been stolen, hidden, almost erased. But not anymore. I clicked the remote and the first slide lit up the screen. A map of the full national rollout, projected savings highlighted in bold gold lettering. I spoke with a calm, measured authority that didn't need to shout to be heard. Every word I said, every number I cited, wasn't just memorized. It lived inside me. It was the difference between reading a story and having written it. I had written this story, and I wasn't about to hand the pen to anyone else. As I moved through the presentation, I caught glimpses of admiration in their faces, the way they nodded, the way they scribbled notes like they didn't want to miss anything. Not fake interest, not politeness, real attention, real respect. It filled the room thicker than oxygen. Afterward, as people crowded around to congratulate me, offer handshakes, pitch collaborations, I stood a little apart for a moment, letting it sink in, letting myself believe it. Not because I was desperate for their approval, but because I had earned it, on my terms, in my voice. Later, back at my desk, I found a small envelope leaning against my monitor. It wasn't labeled. Inside was a single note, written in a rushed, almost childlike script. I'm sorry. No name. But I didn't need one. I knew it was from her. For a long time, I just stared at it. The paper trembled slightly between my fingers, thin as a breath. Part of me wanted to feel vindicated. Part of me wanted to crumple it and toss it into the trash without a second thought. But in the end, I did neither. I folded it carefully, precisely, and slipped it into the bottom drawer of my desk, under a stack of project files. Not as a trophy, not as a reminder of pain, but as proof. Proof that even the people who tried to bury you sometimes realize, too late, that you were the ground they stood on. I pushed the drawer closed. I turned back to my screen, where my next project already waited, blinking softly. Outside the window, the city stretched wide and endless under a deep, bruised sunset. Lights flickered on one by one across the skyline, stubborn against the falling dark. So was I. And this time, I wasn't just surviving. I was building an empire where no one would ever steal my name again.